You get the key idea that this is really about how a complex and novel design project evolved over time and across different perspectives. And I just want to acknowledge Hadi Ali, who is back there. This actually became his thesis project. So, and he did a lot of the work. So, the question, starting off with what was our big question, we were playing around with this. And it was a lot of conversations. I have a background in design research and how people learn design and what is it they learn about design. And a lot of that has to do with iterative design, how you learn through all these cycles of iterations and what triggers all those things. And so I was sort of coming from that space. I do a lot of work also on interdisciplinary thinking, how people think and work across different perspectives. And Hadi had this huge passion for spacecraft design and was involved in a number of the systems of systems field in the College of Engineering. And we were talking about things, and we were talking about the Lunar module and what an opportunity it was to sort of explore how that thing came into being. And then we saw the library grant opportunity. And we started putting all these ideas together and working with a number of folks from the library school, including Amy Van Epps, to say, well, what kinds of stuff is actually out there in terms of how could we really look at this? And to give you a little bit of a sense of why we think this is kind of interesting, I'll show a little video. Oh, I didn't want to do it that way. Oh, well. We'll let it think. And I might have to turn up the volume a little bit.
My name is Tom Kelly. On the day after Election Day 1962, I waited with the rest of the Grumman-Lander team for a call from my boss, Joe Gavin.
Whoever's tapping the pencil, if you value your life, please stop. Why?
Any word?
Yeah, Frank. We got the contract. We're all just observing a moment of silence for the companies that didn't.
So this is all from an HBO miniseries about From the Earth to the Moon. And it gives a number of snapshots over time of the kinds of stuff we think are interesting.
Budget. One thing, thermal shields. Costing us way too much weight in the descent stage.
I don't think we need shields.
All right, Frank. It's going to be 250 degrees in the sunlight and minus 250 in the shade, but we don't need thermal shields.
Sarcasm really helpful, John. I just mean, maybe we can do the job with something other than the shielding that's been used before. Look kind of like that Mylar film between layers of Kapton with an outer layer of nickel foil.
How thin is the Mylar?
Maybe 1/1000 of an inch.
Oh, wow. As long as it's good and sturdy.
And a couple of dozen layers all around. More what we need, like the thrusters. It'll do the job, Tom.
Okay, well, we'll see how it goes in testing. Tom Kelly. Oh, hi, Lou. Yeah, no, I know. Well, yeah. I know what we're up against, Lou. We will make the date. I need to know if we can make the date. Because if we can't, I'm going to have to take some cash from the safe and move to South America. Okay. Bob?
Yep.
Arnie?
Sure.
John?
Yes, sir.
The other John?
Sorry, Tom. The cockpit's going to take another 3 weeks.
We could use a few weeks ourselves.
Oh, sorry. Well, you get the gist. So, get back to here. So, when you think about what this thing is all about, you start to unpack it through a number of lenses. And so, granted, that's a sort of Hollywoodized version But, it starts off with Tom Kelly, who was one of the project managers at Grumman, who was one of the many companies involved in this. So all the companies did a variety of bids from all these different places, and so things were done in pieces and pieces, all collected together magically somehow. The phone call starts off with recognizing that we have a new president. So this is something that is hugely politically charged, and that comes into a lot of the story. Some of the video illustrates that a lot of the technology was completely unprecedented. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what we could do. We didn't know how to do it. We had ideas. We had some existing technology, but a lot of the technology came out of this, became something that was completely new. The last little clip kind of shows a little bit of the story of all the different iterations that were coming into this, and all the challenges weren't just about the technical stuff, but cost, scheduling, managing these things, getting that rather scary phone call from somebody high up in the government saying, can we really do this, because we want to get there first. So you also see a bit of the social story. These are individuals involved, there's multiple companies, society is involved from, again, this sort of national identity around the space race. And so what we thought is that here's this really great opportunity to use the lunar module as a way to understand this socio-technical story of how this thing evolved and emerged over time. And you might say, well, who's interested in those kinds of questions? From the design space, lots of people are interested in it because it is a design phenomenon that really unpacks and gets below the iceberg of the kind of iterations that you hear people talk about to the sort of stuff you don't hear about in the public space. So we really wanted to be able to get data that would show the day-to-day sort of inter-office memo kind of bits. Broader, if we take the timeline of the Apollo program, which was mid-50s to late 70s, that's the same time where systems engineering evolved as a field. And so this is going on at the same time there's becoming this sort of professional identity and organization about this kind of stuff. More recently, obviously we're still in the space of playing around with technology that we've never dreamed of. But one of the things that's going on, and if I use the word brain drain, is that a phenomenon, people, brain drain? So here's all this great expertise. How do you get at it? So this is actually something that Jet Propulsion Laboratories and a number of folks involved with the space program are actively doing. They're trying to understand what exactly was the knowledge that was going on here. How do we help prepare people who are able to work on these kinds of socio-technical problems? So that's where we're coming from. And the big question is really trying to get a story of emergence and evolution. And, okay, I keep thinking I'm attached to here by the line. So this is one of my favorite graphics that Hattie produced. And up in the corner is this funny little round circle in a bar. And that was actually the language that they used, or some of the representations or images that they used to describe the lunar module, which was a part that goes up and a part that lets you come down. And so it went from something that was this very abstract idea, because we didn't exactly know how to go up and how to come down, to the first image at the top, which I lovingly call the tin can, which is essentially meeting the goal of something that will go up and something that will come down. And then when it got into the whole story of what is it we really want to do, and recognizing that this is a nationally charged political agenda, it became something about a manned spacecraft. And so you start seeing things like Windows coming in. And then it was like, it's more than just a manned spacecraft. It actually has to go up and do a number of really key important things. And so you go from an idea to the first prototype to many years later, the actual lunar module that went up. So we wanted to study that evolution. And that's where we went. So finding the stories, given that this is a library scholars grant, we felt it was really important to kind of share the down and dirty bits of trying to actually get this. So if we think about it as a timeline, somewhere in early January, we found out that we had the opportunity. And so we're like, yay, celebrating. And we hooked up with Amy Van Epps, and actually we had hooked up with her for writing a number of pieces of the grant in terms of trying to find where is the data that will allow us to look at this. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. There's a lot of great archives, and a lot of this is stuff that's accessible through the internet. But it wasn't necessarily the stuff we were looking for. We wanted to get those inner office memorandums. We wanted to have the points where they made decisions. We wanted to see the dirty bits. So we went back and forth, and all of a sudden we get this great email from Amy going, ha ha, I think I found the thing that will let you do what you want to do. And, and so Hattie, explored and poked around in that, and he said, yes, this is what we want to do. And we knew that we were going to work with the University of Houston Archives that was working with Johnson Space Center. And we thought, okay, we know what we want to do. Let's start building this relationship with our archivist, Shelley. And whoops, helps if you go to the right button. And here's kind of the backstory. So we've been contacting Shelley. We go, this is what we want to do. And she basically came back, and she was very friendly. This is sort of the tough part of the emails. She's like, that's fabulous. We've got exactly what you want. Oh, by the way, our memorandum of understanding with NASA ends. And so all of our documents are leaving. And oh, by the way, because we're doing this, we're spending all of our time right now packing it up, so it's not really available, even if you could come. And oh, by the way, we kind of can't even really talk to you until February because this is such a huge project, we just can't deal with it. Now, so we're going, oh, great. The plus side is the process of all the packing up actually meant that a lot of the stuff was being archived in a internet-based system. Some of it we wanted. So we went back, and we kept going back and forth with Shelley trying to kind of understand, where's the point of negotiation here? And we went back and forth, and we went back and forth. Whoops, I got to hit the right buttons, my bad. And one of the nice things that happened that kind of put a little smile on our face is there was an opportunity to take a workshop on archival research and how do you go about doing it. And we're like, okay, great. That's a good sign. It means that we will actually have access. And somewhere in June, Shelley came back and said, oh, wait a minute. I think we can pull this off. You have this window. And oh, by the way, I'm leaving on pregnancy leave in another month or so. So, it was a sharp window. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. And we think we can do this, and let's make it happen. And so for a couple weeks in August, Hattie went off to Houston to go and paw through the archives and collect documents. So what did we collect? We were looking at the time span of 1945 to 1978, sort of when the seed of the idea and the final Apollo project. We were looking at letters, memorandum, meeting minutes, the stuff that was happening in those meetings. We also took advantage of systems handbooks that they had, which was them documenting how they went about doing stuff. So it's sort of their espoused version and their enacted version. We had photographs of various drawings of how the lunar module evolved, flight readiness reviews, so kind of this human-centered piece that was coming in where the astronauts were saying, it'd be really nice if we had windows, besides all sorts of other things. And also minutes around the configuration board, control board. So all of these documenting the design, fabrication, and testing modifications through this particular project. So what did this look like? About 3,700 files and 8 gigabytes. So lots of data, and I'll say a little bit more about how we're trying to kind of target particular chunks and go in depth. So this is just a little slideshow of the actual collection. We figured that that would be something you guys would like to see. I love the fact that it comes with an itty bitty little spy hole. I don't know. So it's all maintained in cold storage. It's a very, very cold room. All of that to maintain the integrity of the documents. And what you basically do is they have a very well documented archive. You go in and you say, I want box number, blah, blah, blah. And they go in, they get it, they take it over, and then there's a nice space for you to go through the actual documents itself. One of the fun things that we noticed is we knew, because of our funny timeline, that this was going to be sort of high energy, trying to find stuff and kind of collecting a little more data than we might actually use because of the funny timelines. And finding out that we originally thought we would get a little nifty scanner for $100 and do that. Camera and cell phone worked fine. So high quality documents out of that, simple devices. And so, there's a nice little place to do this. And the ways that we documented is we created a number of folders around each kind of data that we had, or each little chunk of data. And in that folder were tags in terms of where did this data come from, so we could backtrack it later, the actual data itself, and various notes about early flags for this is something we want to come to for such and such. So lots of data. And here's some of the examples of some of the schematics and drawings. And to kind of speak to the fun political, historical context of this, we have these nice little renderings. And for me, they kind of look like 1950s car designs, which kind of makes sense in terms of where they're at. And there are early ideas of what it really meant to have a manned vehicle to go out there, that there would be two people sitting in these little chairs with their little window and driving this thing, as if driving made any sense, right? As if forward made any sense. And so, you get to sort of see these early evolutions of these things, and the drawings as a way of the people on the team to communicate to each other about how something actually worked. And there's also these great documents, and these were really the things we were most excited about. And so here is a document from somebody on the team, and you can't really, some of you might be able to read it, but what it is, and it kind of comes back to some of the little video, it's a person going, I've been thinking about that problem you gave me, and I've had restless nights, and I can't sleep. And the more I think about it, the more I think we actually can do something like this. Let's go ahead and let's do it. So it's not actually this highly technical document of, numbers and drawings and, dimensions of things. It's really somebody just saying, I've been thinking about this, I've been struggling with it, and then at the bottom, this is my proposition. And again, remembering that the name of Apollo Lunar Module wasn't really there at the beginning, right? That was sort of kind of closer to the mid-end point. And the way that they refer to it is the bug. I call it the tin can. So these are the kinds of things that we can get out of these documents and give you a little picture. So building the story, this is where we're at right now with those many, many files and many, many gigabytes of memory. One of the things we're doing is we're integrating historical and design research. And what this means is really taking advantage of historical methods in terms of thinking about how do you build the story through primary and secondary sources, but also connecting to design research in terms of how do we study the way people design. That makes sense. In the video, Tom Kelly is sort of the first person there. He's one of the project managers at Grumman. He's also, among many of the people involved with the project, wrote a sort of biographical account of his experiences. One of the things we've been finding is he did a really great job. And one of the ways that we're going to try to target specific design iterations is going in between the book and the story he writes of particular big iterations and identifying those points in time and the people involved and sort of going over to our data set and digging around in that space with a little bit of extra flack to kind of make sure we covered our spaces. So it's helping us identify, sort of direct our energy to particular parts of the data. One of the things that's happening is we're also connecting with NASA's Jet Propulsion Oral History Project. And so part of this is with a paper that was recently accepted for the, what's the I stand for? I'm really bad with acronyms, AIAA. American Institute of Aeronautical, thank you. I'm so bad. And their conference is actually in Pasadena, which is right where JPL is. And we're going to go and give some of our first experiences on this and try to see if we can connect with JPL. We've already got a number of avenues into there around how this can be a part of their larger story. And that's pretty much where we're at right now. Really want to acknowledge Amy Van Epps. Would be fun to share these late night emails of things going back and forth. And obviously, David for sort of giving a nice primer on how to go about doing this kind of stuff. Shelley Kelly, our fabulous archivist at the University of Houston, who is now a new mom. And Jean Grant, who is also at the University of Houston, who really helped us. And that's sort of where our story is at. And I don't know if anybody has any questions or maybe, make that yellow slide go away. So.
First, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm the liaison librarian to aeronautics and astronautics now. I'm just curious if you ran across any published documents that were helpful, or if you've run across any roadblocks of their not letting you see stuff.
I'll ask Hattie to sort of add in his points because he was at Houston and I wasn't. So there's lots of published documents that are out there, and that was actually one of the key challenges we had in terms of trying to like, what's the stuff that's out there, and then trying to figure out, is that stuff out there going to help us answer this question? And some of it sort of, but it didn't have the documents like I showed here, the working documents. And it was through Amy sort of like going around and sort of checking all these archives that we sort of came across something that cataloged things in a really great way. And then from there, we were like, aha, we know where to go. And so I'll let Hattie kind of add.
It's interesting. So there are published work, but it's not like really so much what we are trying to do. I know Kelly, for instance, himself, he wrote like a couple of papers on the topic, but they still don't capture the essence of what they want to see, like the iterations, things that happen in the middle. Most of the published work talk about like the end result, so what happened. In terms of like access to the documents, these are archived materials, so it was easy to get into them. However, if I would have waited like till maybe February of this year, maybe later on, I couldn't have access to them because they would go to the National Archives for a while. They won't be accessible. And one thing actually to add is the archives, NASA Johnson Space Center gave the archives to UHCL for 10 years. So they were like a memorandum of understanding for 10 years. And Shelley was telling me nobody was touching actually the documents. So maybe after the Columbia accident, and then President Bush came in to state the vision for space exploration. So contractors were coming to see how the Apollo people got it right. So it was not like actually academic researchers who were checking these documents. It was mainly contractors who were checking them.
And one of our weird concerns that didn't really play out is that Hattie is not a U.S. citizen. He's from Jordan, which makes it even more complicated. And when you start thinking about access to archive materials on something like the NASA documents, we were concerned that might be one of the flags that people raised. It didn't end up being the case, but it was one of the things that we were worried about.
I think once it's publicly released to an archive, I don't think you'd have any problems.
Yeah.
I've even had problems trying to get documents from professors
Yeah.
working on NASA research.
Yeah.
And I have to say, that's why I was so excited when I found that they had
contracted out with the University of Houston Clear Lake, I thought, oh, we just got outside of having to deal with Johnson Space Center. We might
Right.
have a big
Yeah.
opening.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's weird when they want to put up a roadblock. They do.
Any other questions? Join me in thanking Robin.
And Hattie?